Hello, my name is Kelsey Birdwhistle, and I am here to do a PD session with you about how to incorporate book talks into your classroom. Book talks are really important for helping to engage students and get students excited about reading. And so, what I've done is I've put together a presentation where I'm going to talk to you about why we want to do book talks, how we do them, strategies to use when incorporating book talks, and then also giving you some examples. So to get started, I'm going to go through a quick presentation with you. And before I do that, I want to show you this is one of my sources for how to do book talks. This is literature for literature in the young adult reader by Ernest Bond. And I'll talk a little bit more about my sources later in the presentation as well. So let's get started. Okay, so first of all, why do we do book talks? We talk a lot about being librarians or English language arts teachers and wanting our kids to read. But oftentimes it can be challenging to point each individual student to the book that's most appropriate for them. Book talks are meant to be a way to introduce books to large groups of students in a way that it engages them and hopefully gets them excited about reading and hopefully hits some of their interests as well. So why do we do book talks? Book talks help to guide students to quality literature. They are meant to get students excited about reading. They are also there to help empower students. Oftentimes, struggling readers feel like they struggle because they don't connect with what they're reading. And so a book talk can be a good way to hopefully help them find something that means something to them. Book talks are also great for helping to address rigorous content. We want students to be reading books on their ability level. And then, according to the Common Core standards, we're talking about books that are engaging for them, but also the idea that they can read at or above their grade level as well. And we always want to see that growth, even if a student is not on grade level. Oftentimes, when students are stuck, they tend to gravitate toward things that are easy or that are just really quickly accessible instead of trying to push themselves to something that might be a little bit more challenging that will help increase their reading level. Also, we want to give students a reason to read. Sometimes, adolescents are dealing with a lot of different issues. And by engaging, especially with young adult literature, helping students to connect with, a young adult protagonist who's dealing with real life issues can really help them to latch on to a book and really find enjoyment in the reading, but also find growth as well. So how do we do book talks? So first of all, or how do you select books for a book talk? These are some book selection criteria that, again, are in Bond's book, as well as a source from a library organization as well. Consider the interests of your audience, right? You don't want to introduce a book that none of your students are really going to be interested in, right? I personally really like thinking about Renaissance artwork, but my students may not. Some of them may, but I want to pick something that's going to appeal to a wide variety of students. According to Bond, the book should contain at least one of the following, and it can include more than one of these things. Should be engaging content, typically something that is a hot topic for students. Could involve strong characters that students can connect with, or it might have an interesting writing style. I'm going to take a look at 3 different books with you today, and writing style is going to be a big part of how I chose the 3 books that I'm going to show you today. The book should be meaningful to you, and you should never talk about something that you haven't read. So as a teacher, these are going to need to be things that you have an invested interest in. You can't just sit up there and be like, maybe you should try this book, right? It has to be something that you really care about. Okay, so strategies. How do we incorporate these book talks, or how do we go about giving one? So again, according to Bond, different strategies that you can implement. There are lots of different ones, and you need to kind of try to think about varying your strategy from book talk to book talk. If you're always giving the same book talk every single time, it's going to be a little bit underwhelming for your students, which is the opposite of what you want. So thinking about this, some strategies could include giving a synopsis of the book. Again, you never want to give away the ending of a book, but you want to give them an idea of what's going on and then try to hook them into reading further. You could include a compelling passage from the book. Be enthusiastic, again, should be something that you've read and that you care about. Select books for different reasons. So the idea, you could base all of your book selections on a theme, you could base them all on a character, you could base them all on a certain writing style. But you need to make sure that you have a variety of different reasons why you're selecting the books that you're selecting. Also, think about going between genres as well. So a lot of what I'm going to introduce today is fiction, but you could absolutely do book talks focused on nonfiction, informative works, argumentative kind of focuses. So think about why you're introducing what you're introducing. You should also try to review multiple books at once. If you stick to just one book at a time, you might catch a group of students in your class, but chances are you're not going to always introduce a book that's going to be appealing to every single student in your class. So choosing a select few to introduce even a week by week basis can help to make sure that you're engaging more students. For older students, it's a good thing to vary the focus of your talks. Again, that variety is going to help keep those book talks more alive and engaging for those students. And then for younger students, allowing some time for investigation. If you have those books available, oftentimes the younger students are the ones who are kind of going to be more drawn to come and pick them up and actually start looking at them themselves. As for older students might, feel like that's too invasive and they don't want to be seen as somebody who's like immediately drawn in by what you have to say. So thinking about your students and thinking about what works best in your situation. So those are some strategies, and here are some examples. All of these images I pulled just from Amazon to give you an idea of what these covers look like. But these are the 3 books that I've chosen to do a quick book talk example with you over. So we have Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson, which is a collection of poetry, which is strongly autobiographical, though not entirely. We have a book called Refugee, which I'll get into a little bit more later. That's by Alan Gratz. And then we have The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. Obviously a very popular book at this time, and something that deals with very real life things that are in current events and in the news that our students are going to be familiar with today. So let's see. Oh, great. Okay. So I'm going to be able to pull out of my screen there for just a moment, which is fantastic. So I'm going to do first Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woods. That's backwards because of my camera, but that works. So again, her book is based on poetry. And so the whole book is all poems, just a collection of poems, but it does tell a story as well. So it does have a narrative element. This is a beautiful poem called The Beginning. And Jacqueline Woodson is going to talk a little bit about she has dreams of becoming a writer, but she talks about how it all got started. The Beginning. I cannot write a word yet, but at 3, I know the letter J. Love the way it curves into a hook that I carefully top with a straight hat, the way my sister has taught me to do. Love the sound of the letter and the promise that one day this will be connected to a full name, my own, that I will be able to write by myself, without my sister's hand over mine, making it do what I cannot yet do. How amazing these words are that slowly come to me. How wonderfully on and on they go. Will the words end? I ask, whenever I remember to. Nope, my sister says, all of 5 years old now, and promising me infinity. So again, a great book. You can see how Jacqueline deals with her being raised in the 1960s during a very trying time during the United States and the Civil Rights Movement. And as an African-American girl, how she fits into all of the different experiences of her life and how those experiences make her who she is today. The second book that I'm going to talk about today is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. And again, like Brown Girl Dreaming, we have a girl who is struggling very much with her identity. And Star, the main character of this book, talks a lot about how she struggles to identify in different social groups, and especially as she encounters very traumatic events in light of the death of her friend Khalil. So we'll talk about that. This is an excellent book based on some of the adult themes that are in it. It is one that you might have to get parent approval for, as it contains some language and some sexual content, things like that you want to keep in mind of. But these are very real issues that students are dealing with today. And again, here's the cover for you. And here's our passage. I shouldn't have come to this party. I'm not even sure I belong at this party. That's not on some bougie shit either. There are just some places where it's not enough to be me, either version of me. Big D's spring break party is one of those places. I squeeze through sweaty bodies and follow Kenya, her curls bouncing past her shoulders. A haze lingers over the room, smelling like weed, and music rattles the floor. Some rapper calls out for everybody to nay-nay, followed by a bunch of heys as people launch into their own versions. Kenya holds up her cup and dances her way through the crowd. Between the headache from the loud-ass music and the nausea from the weed odor, I'll be amazed if I cross the room without spilling my drink. Again, The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas. Finally, I have this book called called Refugee by Alan Gratz. This book is a little bit different of a writing style. It rotates between three different characters. So 3 different narrators and from 3 different time periods as well. So you have Joseph, who is a Jewish boy in Nazi Germany during the 1930s. You have Isabel, who is a young woman who lives in Cuba, set in 1994, and her family decides to try to leave Cuba to try to have a better life. And then thirdly, we have Mahmoud from Syria in 2015, and he is trying to escape the war-torn country that he has found himself living in. I'm going to read from Mahmoud's story. This book was really meaningful to me because I teach a lot about the Holocaust in my classroom and Nazi Germany, but I think oftentimes we don't connect with how some of those realities are very much a part of the fabric of what's still going on in our lives as well. So Mahmoud, his story is only 4 years ago from where we are today, right? 2019, and he's just experiencing this in 2015. So this is a passage, and this is Mahmoud and his family are relaxing at home when all of a sudden there is an airstrike in their neighborhood. By now he knew what an incoming missile sounded like. Shh-doom! The wall of his apartment exploded, blasting broken bits of concrete and glass through the room. The floor lurched up under Mahmoud and threw him and the table and chairs back against the wall of the kitchen. The world was a whirlwind of bricks and broken dishes and table legs and heat, and Mahmoud slammed into a cabinet. His breath left him all at once, and he fell onto the floor with a heavy thud in a heap of metal and mortar. Mahmoud's ears rang with a high-pitched whine like the TV when the satellite was searching for a signal. Above him, what was left of the ceiling light threw sparks. Nothing else mattered in that moment but air. Mahmoud couldn't draw a breath. It was like someone was sitting on his chest. He thrashed in the rubble, panicking. He couldn't breathe. He flailed wildly at the debris, digging and scratching at the wreckage, like he could somehow claw his way back to a place where there was air. And then his lungs were working again, raking in great gulps. The air was full of dust, and it scratched and tore at his throat as it went down. But Mahmoud had never tasted anything so sweet. His ears still rang, but through the buzz he could hear more thuds and booms. It wasn't just his building that had been hit, he realized. It was his whole neighborhood. So again, Refugee by Alan Gratz. Some very strong themes with identity and being forced to leave your home that I think a lot of students will connect with and have a good time reading as well. So let me see if I can pop out of here again. All right, good deal. So those are our 3 books, Refugee, Brown Girl Dreaming, and The Hate U Give. Just a few samples for you there. Finally, I just want to show you my sources page. Book Talking Tips came from, again, a library source that has a lot of good ideas for you. Also, just doing a search for book talking will bring up so many different ideas, YouTube videos as examples. So, and sometimes, you may not feel like you have the time to read everything, but maybe you find a really good book talk that's already there for you, right? It could be a great resource. And then you have the Bond and the Martis textbooks there as well. one more thought here, and I'm probably a prime example of this, but one thing that can make your book talk really powerful is making sure that you practice before you try to present in front of a group. That can really help your presentation and make you that much more compelling. Okay, thanks for listening. And as a follow-up activity today, I would like for you to select just one book that you would like to use as a book talk. And select that book based on the criteria that I've discussed with you. And then once you've selected that book, plan out a book talk and go ahead and record a video and submit it so that you can actually practice getting some book talk experience yourself. All right, thank you very much.